The other day I was speaking to somebody who was suggesting that yoga's popularity is on the wane. It's no longer trendy and people are no longer interested in yoga. I understand where she's coming from. This is a person who has worked in the yoga industry for 20, 30 years. So I understand her perspective, because 20 years ago there was this period, it lasted for a few years, when a significant number of people would think it was a quite normal thing to do to go and invest the whole weekend on a yoga workshop, for example. And that is no longer the case. Far fewer people are interested in doing that. And they're more likely to perhaps go and join a plant ceremony weekend. That's the more trendy thing. However, plant medicine and yoga are not trends. The things that look like trends are the superficial clinging to the superficial manifestation of something that is actually demonstrating a much deeper, more profound, primal, ancestral, deep in our DNA longing to actually remember who we are. And that is what yoga is all about. Yoga is not about how I can stand in a different position and look sexy on Instagram. No! Plant medicine is not about having cool experiences. It's so the medicine can actually heal us and come back to wholeness. And that is what yoga is all about. It means coming in to wholeness. And I am not persuaded for one instant that the deep human longing for that is on the wane. For sure, that deep longing is shrouded and veiled in the superficial trends of our transient culture. However, that deep longing will never be extinguished, because there is a light that never goes out. The spirit never dies. And so I find it actually encouraging that yoga was trendy for a while and now plant medicine's trendy, because deep in those traditions are things that have only survived for thousands of years because they work and because they are answering the deep, ongoing, perennial needs of the human being. And I am also convinced that yoga is not on the wane, because I see the desire for yoga is everywhere. And people, even who wouldn't imagine it, are speaking about yoga. For example, the English polymath actor, creator, comedian Stephen Fry, a man who professes to be an atheist. I saw him interviewed on a podcast. It's called the Diary of a CEO podcast. And during this very good conversation, it's a wonderful conversation with Stephen Fry, he was talking about something his friend Rowan Atkinson had told him about acting. When you're on stage, said Rowan Atkinson, and Stephen Fry was relating it, when you're on stage, you need to be relaxed. But you need to have that tension, that desire, that presence. If you're too tense, it doesn't work. If you're too relaxed, it doesn't work. You need that balance. In other words, what is Stephen Fry talking about when he's talking about acting? He's talking about yoga. You need the balance, the steadiness and the easefulness, the engagement and the relaxation. So even a professed atheist actor, Stephen Fry, is talking about yoga on a massive podcast. And talking of massive podcasts, one of the doyens, stars of that whole realm of the internet. The internet is a place where people can get in touch with really useful, perennial useful ideas. David Goggins. Badass David Goggins is teaching yoga. He was interviewed recently on the Chris Williamson Modern Wisdom podcast, and he was speaking about yoga. What was his first book called? Can't Hurt Me. This is the state that yoga is intended to help a person remember, recover, reclaim. That place where we're really well, so well that whatever happens in the external does not shake us from our wellness. Can't hurt me. That's what yoga's about. What's Goggins' second book called? Never Finished. How is yoga practice? It's never finished. It's all lifelong. Yoga practice is not about executing some pose, then it's done. No. Yoga practice is about cultivating steadiness in this reality that's constantly changing. And what does that mean? It means we're never finished. We're never finished until we're a realized master and we are in the state of nirvana, the place where the winds of desire no longer blow, as I heard John O'Donoghue once describe it. Nir without vana, it's like vata, it means the winds of desire. Nirvana, the state of completion, of wholeness. We have returned to the zero state. When we are in the state of zero, what do I mean by that? The state of undifferentiatedness. We are completely whole. We are devoid of all desire. We have come back into oneness with everything. In that state, we're finished. Until then, we are never finished. But if we want to cultivate that state, we have to work with the tenacity, the persistence that David Goggins is teaching. In that interview with Chris Williamson, David Goggins said he wanted to be a preacher. He is a preacher. He's teaching people yoga. It might not look like yoga according to the tragic misconceptions around the word now because of all this airy-fairy yoga that has become very prevalent, and the very bad name yoga's got because it's been presented as this ridiculously narrow thing of yoga postures. But actually, the time-tested principles of yoga are showing up in David Goggins' message, in the speech of a man like Stephen Fry, somebody who is an expert in the realm of the arts and the transmission of information through story. It's no accident. Yoga is not on the wane. The resurgence or the expansion of yoga is only just beginning.